Welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and I kind of get off to a little bit of a head start here, putting in some of the background. I'm doing another winter scene, and I like these scenes that have a combination of warm color. In this case, it almost looks like an orangey, purplish color, and then a soft sky. And this is it's a winter scene, but it's almost similar to what the winter we're having now in respect to the ponds aren't frozen over that much this year. We've had a little bit of snow, a couple of snowstorms, snow covers that have lasted a few days, and but that's about it. Now, some of the nights have been very cold, but so far we've been a little bit lucky about the snow. Right now I'm putting a wash in. It's a combination of alizarin crimson, which has red, but it has a blue in it. And then you've got your the other color that's sort of an orangey color. And I'm using a little bit of my red in that, mixing it in with, you can mix it in with a little bit of raw sienna, warm it up a little bit more than what it is. And right now I'm putting in these washes that like it's wet in the wet, so that there's just a suggestion of soft edges. But other than that, there's not an awful lot of color. When you use only one color, but a range of value between light and dark of that particular color, it's called monochromatic, one color. And that's what I'm doing now. And the background is just a lot of soft washes, wet into wet. And I'm probably adding a little bit more raw sienna into it than probably what the picture has, but that's all right. We're allowed to kind of brighten up our pictures a little bit more than maybe what the camera was able to do, putting in this wash. So this is a scene, typical brook or canal that runs down through the field, and it has a little bit of foreground. And then what I like about it is that the water itself kind of loops around, so that you get sort of a diagonal movement that takes your eye back up into the picture. Now, way off in the distance, there's some hills, mountains, I should say, probably something that you'd see around this area. I wouldn't say that they're really high. The mountains that are kind of worn down a bit, but something that you would find maybe in western part of Massachusetts, up in the Berkshires, maybe the Green Hills of Vermont. They don't seem to be as high as probably the mountains in New Hampshire, out to that range there, where Mount Washington is. But I'm just kind of dropping some of these washes for the background, and it should dry fairly fast. The lights give off some heat, so that we can do that. What we have here is down in this lower right-hand corner, there's like a triangle shape of some ground covered with snow, sort of a light snow. Well, it could be 3 to 4 inches or so of snow to cover. And that's along through here. There's a lot of weeds and grass and things that grow up in through that. And then out here, looks like an animal paw, And that the projection of land comes out, kind of goes around here, kind of goes off on an angle. Back here we've got the background of that water that comes around the bend. And then there's a field, relatively flat area. And then there's some trees in the background here, and quite a few trees, some tall, fir trees mostly, I guess. And then there's some other trees that would be a kind of like almost a little island in itself of trees in through here. So they kind of go up a little bit higher into the sky area. And there's 1, 2, 3, I'll say 4 or 5. Kind of keep it an uneven number. Now, normally I sketch my pictures relatively light so that I don't have to erase any pencil marks afterwards. Once the paint dries, the paper too, you can erase some of the pencil marks through the paper, but what I generally do is if the marks aren't that noticeable, they could add a little bit to the texture of the sketch. So now what I'm doing is letting that set a little bit, and the next move I'm going to be making is coming in a little dark, some bands into this area around where the water is here. The water is darker, quite a bit darker value. And then you have some of the land in the foreground. So that's what we'll be working on. So I'm going to, I think we're getting to the point where it won't run too much, so we can start in. Now, I usually start with a big brush. You can use either a flat or a round. I probably, today, for what I'm doing, I could get away with the maybe 1-inch flat for a little while and just put in some of the darker areas. And it's kind of a combination. The color, to me, looks like it's a combination of this red color I have, which is actually alizarin crimson. They call it quinacridone rose, but this particular quinacridone rose is actually alizarin crimson. And I'm going to take a little bit of my ultramarine, let's see, right up in here, and I'm going to mix some of that in there and try to match some of the purplish, warm purple that I have in the photograph here. So there's going to be a band of that right across. That's fairly straight through here. It goes across like this, and then we kind of push it up into here. There's going to be some higher trees in this area, and kind of pull that across here. Going to be a little bit of that color that goes down into the field. That's almost like a dreamy color. I mean, it's a dreamy wash background. Get these trees straightened out here a little bit, fir trees, and they're kind of in the background there. This all fades in. We'll put a little more color across. It's like a field of snow. And then we come around, right around in here. This is where the water is, down through here. And goes back, let's see, where are we? Okay. Yeah, I guess we can make that darker right in through here. Right in that area is a little bit darker. And this is going to be darker right along through here. Pull that back out, straight across there. And then this is a little bit of a piece of land that's in the foreground. And it's sort of like a triangle, a little wedge in the corner. And I'm just going to kind of give that a little bit of a kind of a contoured, kind of bumpy background. And pull this out. It's going to be water through here. The water kind of lies flat. Sometimes you do something like this, and it doesn't look too bad like that. Of course, it's a little bit too soft. It wouldn't carry across the room very far. But sometimes these washes make a nice soft color picture. Okay, something like that. Let's get these napkins out of the way. Okay, that's that. I like the way that kind of contrasts here, and we'll put some things going out of that. Now this is fairly a little bit uneven through here, where these trees are, and what we have is a little bit of a darker area. Let's take a little bit more ultramarine, mix that in with my alizarin. It's going to be a little bit darker right in there, and it's going to be much darker over in this area, so kind of go over that a little bit more. A tree there, another tree in here. The trees are kind of tight and clustered, so they kind of fuse together a little bit. Something like that. Whoops. That probably would fade right in. You don't even notice it. There you go. It's a little bit darker through here. Now, what this is a matter of building up the color. And when you put a soft wash in, that's like a foundation, the base color. And then you build up off of that where you see areas that are a little bit darker. This is quite a bit obviously darker in through here and into this area. So having said that, I can probably still stick. I'm going to add some ultramarine, more blue, and probably don't need too much more of the alizarin crimson, the reddish color. But that's going to be right across through here, right across in there, some through here, and you kind of come around the bend in there. And what I do is try to take that, and this inside edge, you want to pull that out if you can. I'm going to put a little bit more water, or a little less paint, more water, and just kind of soften that up. Pull it right out, right across here. You see where that is? Take that, pull that back. That goes right out to the edge of your paper. Right out in here. There you go. All right. You get that sort of a soft wash into there. So now you know pretty much where the water's going to be. We'll just add a little bit more color into that. It sort of stays a little bit pinker, orangey here, in through this area. Yeah, okay. Well, we can add a little bit more. Let's put a pinch more of that ultramarine into here, because this gets really deeper into here, really deeper color. Now, sometimes you get that sort of a water stain, and if you like that texture, I just leave it in there. Leave it like that. Let's go a little darker here. Pull that across. Right along this edge here. There you go. Now, if you want to make any sort of a lighter reflection, I just usually kind of turn the brush on its edge, and you can pull some of that color out if you want to put some of the highlight back in like that. Just lift that out and wipe your brush on your paper towel. you're using the brush like a towel. See, down through here, this paper's doing all sorts of texture here. Pretty wild. You wouldn't be able to get that effect if you tried to. It's very good. Yeah. There it is. Some of this is changing a little bit up in here. This does get a little bit darker near the edge. Pull that back. And this goes a little further down around the corner here, over and back. Pull that in there. I think a lot of times when you do nature, watercolor is great for that. When you do things outside, outdoors, the colors are very vibrant. Paint goes on nice and smooth. And sometimes you have to put down the bigger brush. I think I had another one in here. Let's see. Oh, I guess we can get by with that small one. This is also a flat brush, probably 1/2 inch instead of 1 inch. And I gotta see what can happen in through here. I'm kind of letting that edge do its thing, not touching it. But I do have to go a little bit deeper. Some of this area here, this gets real dark. Let's see if I can pull that out. Oh, I don't know if that's maybe too dark. Now we'll just spread it out a little bit more. Try to keep that kind of nice and flat if you can. Okay. Come around the bend here, darker in there. Little sharper edge. Edges are very interesting. They're sort of important too. You got a sort of a soft edge, and then you can have a sharper, harder edge along the same lines. Pull this back here. Now, if this was going to be frozen over, I could take I usually take a credit card, cut up an old credit card, and do that, kind of push the paint around, and it makes it look like ice. I'm getting a pretty good effect in there. You got to go back up here a little higher in the picture. Right about there. Now, if you start losing water on the brush and paint, the brush becomes sort of like a dry brush effect. It's kind of, there's not much water there, but you can control it because it's not going to be running or settling into a puddle. I'm going up around the corner right here now. Now, even though I'm looking at a picture, usually I end up never copying it. It never comes out being copied. This is really something else, the way the texture's coming out on the paper. Sometimes we call it a defect in the paper, but it might be a defect maybe in the paint too, and the amount of water that you're using. I'm just going across over and back here. I want to get more contrast along this edge here up into here. So I'm going to probably have to go a little darker there. Some more paint on the paper here. See what we got. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, we'll put some, just get some darker, if I can push some of that darker color right up in there. Right across there. Kind of go around a little bit of a knob here. And then it gets darker right along this edge here. Pull that out. Sometimes you get a little bit of an ice flow that might be out in the water. Some broken chip of ice there. Let's get this darker towards the edge over here. Okay. Now, in the meantime, while I'm kind of working on this, I'm letting the upper part dry out so I can kind of control that a little bit. There you go. Pull some of that in. And I want to get a little bit darker over in here. Just a little bit in here. There's a little dark like groove on the ground here. We can kind of pull that out. And it's softer. This edge here can be a little bit darker. Right here, pull that back out. And just blend it out. Kind of pull it towards the center. Okay. Something like that. I think my paintings got a lot more blue in it than this one has. You know, even though you're looking at a photograph, you're trying to copy it a little bit, but it never seems to happen exactly the same way. Make this a little bit more contrast in here and over in here. That looked to me sort of getting quite a bit of blue there, and this set doesn't have any blue in it. So we might have to put a little bit more, kind of cover some of that and some of the purple. Sometimes if it looks all right, I leave it. Sometimes a picture needs a little bit more extra color. Okay, let's sharpen up this edge here. Now that it's drier, I can do that. Let's see, take a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more contrast up in here. Right in there. Kind of interesting. I think I'm getting a lot more blue than the picture of the photograph. Okay, now we're getting dry back here. So let's see if we can work some ground in across here. Make that a little darker. We can start bring out the trees a little bit more too. Yeah, a bit more of that in there. Let's see. What else? We'll come across. Let's come across here. And just push some more trees in here. Not a very good point on the top there. Maybe I could try that again. And come down here. You actually can go all the way across that way. From right to left. Okay, right across through here. And this will be all a tight woodland here. Okay, now you got a sort of a middle warmer area up in here more. And the mountains are going to be a little bit lighter. You warm them up a little bit. I think they're all right to put in. You have to make sure the sky's dry. But the mountains are way back up in there. You can just barely make them out. Something like that. I think they need to be a little bit warmer. Get a little bit more orange color in through there. And that doesn't have to be that light either. Why do we do this? A little bit more. Mix a little more paint here. We can kind of bring this up a little bit more. Now I don't want to get this too bright because I don't want the background to be kind of trying to take over the foreground. So what I'm doing is just kind of pulling some of that color out of there with water, just lighten it up. Back over in here. Something like that. That's pretty in through there. That's not bad. Now this here needs a little bit more contrast. Mix that, make that a little darker. Okay, just a little bit more. Get this darker through here. And a little bit darker through here. Right across through here. I like that way that came out. That came out good. Let's fill this in here. Okay. That's coming out good. That's a nice color out there. I think I'm going to try to get this in there more. Soften that out. And let's take some of the wet out of here. Otherwise it'd take forever to dry. There you go. A little bit over here. You can make the contour of the land a little bit bumpier there. Sometimes if you have something that's too flat, it's boring. Your eye's just going back and forth. Nothing to slow it down. Okay, we're off over in here. Let's see. Okay. Now what I gotta do pretty soon, I gotta slow down, let this dry. Now keep wetting it. Maybe lift some of that water out. Okay, let's see. All right, a little darker through here. Up to there, along the edge. Pull that back out. You can almost see where, the ice is starting to form, it has a form, it has a fine film of ice. Okay. And drag that out. All right. I don't like that shape in there. It looks like somebody spilled some paint on the paper. Maybe I can take some of that out of there. Hide it with some white. Just lighten it up. Real blue now. And put some darker color in it. I don't know if that's hiding it or not. Okay. So this is coming out pretty good back there. Trying to get it to dry so I can put some trees in there. Okay. I want to get this kind of smooth it out a bit. Now this is a little bit light compared to the photograph, so I'm going to come back and give that another coat of paint with a big brush again. Okay. Now what we have to do out of all that soft color, what we got to do is come back and really sharpen sharpen it up a bit, pull it together. Just have that go off there somewhere. Okay. All right. What part I should start with first? I don't like that. I kind of snub that off. Maybe I can give it a little bit more, put some of the shape back into it. Okay. Yeah, right back up in here. I'm going to make that a little bit more noticeable. Take some of that inside edge off and push it up into here. And I'm going to come back down here too. I'm going to bring this back in here. And I'm going to make this quite a bit darker. Yeah. See, sometimes you have to really exaggerate it more a little, just to pull it out. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with one big glob of color. See how by putting that dark in, how that brings that out now. Go right along this edge here. Okay. Bring this into here more. Gets darker right along the bottom here too. Take some color out of here and give it back over here. We sort of go back and forth. We'll keep the water sort of flat. It's going to never really looks exactly like the photograph, because you're you're using the photograph kind of as a reference, but you're not actually trying to copy it like a camera taking a picture of it. You're just using what you have there for part of your interpretation. What's going on here? Keep that flat right across. And a little bit more down through here, break that up. Okay. Now, let's see what doing on time. Not too bad. What I'm going to be doing, where I've got some dry areas, I'm going to start putting some trees in there. But you have to wait until it dries, otherwise you're going to have smudgy trees. Which would be all right if you're trying to make the trees way back in the woods there. Okay, we'll go in here a little bit more. Take some of that edge off. Go right in the corner. Okay. I'll go over here a bit. Now I can probably start, hopefully making some of those trees. I've got a smaller brush. That's not what I'm looking for. Well, try to use this one. But what I want to do is make get some of those shapes of the trees back in here. Sometimes, if you don't have a real thin brush, you have to do is use a marker. There's some trees back there. Another one off here, over in here. Bring out the contrast a little bit more. Go a little darker. See if we can get a little bit more tip on the trees here. Kind of tricky, a little bit. Get some more over here. Yeah, wiggle the brush around a little bit more. open to here. Break this up a little bit more like a tree. I'm off over here now. Looking at some of this. Maybe you get that tree in there, I don't know. I had a rigger, but I don't know where. Might have ended up in one of my other paint markers. There's like a larger tree that's up into here. Something like that. And there's a few more, something else in here, something else in back there. And it pulls this out. Something like that. Yeah. If something's really noticeable, it just jumps right out at you a lot of times. Like if this is too dark through here. What I could do with this, I could either pull that out, wet it, blot it, see how you can lighten up a spot? I may want to level this off here more. It's really darker down at the base of the trees too. Maybe do that. I think, as far as painting goes, I think I enjoy landscapes about as well as anything. Woodlands, stuff like that. I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, one thing I don't do is I don't do portraits. I could do faces, a face, but as far as making it look like them, as much like them, that's a little bit tricky. And you try to make, make them look somewhat attractive, bring out all the good features, I guess. Oh, we got something like this. You put a few down. Now, the final touches, I couldn't find my little rigger. That one brush that kind of disappears because it ends up in another paint box somewhere. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to see if I can use the fan brush. And you just put in some kind of things growing out of here. Something like that. There's some things off here. You could tap with the brush too, get some texture. I think this has a little bit of a, I don't need a big brush for this, but just a little bit of a brush. Just put something a little bit dark right in this corner. And there's something a little bit darker here. Excuse me. Let's see what we have. Oh, there's something a little bit deeper there. No, in places, just to break it up. Maybe a little darker in there. Fine tuning here, huh? Break this up a little bit. Now, a lot of times if you want to put some white back, the problem is there really isn't any white. There's lighter areas, but there's no such thing as actually being white. That's, mine is, this isn't. So I could probably quiet that corner down. Something soft around some of these shapes, and they don't jump out as much. They soften in. Hopefully, and put some texture back here. I'm just going to go, this is quite a bit lighter than the photograph, so I'm just going to quiet this down just a little bit. Over here maybe, a little bit more over here. Just quiet it down. Now mine is quite noticeable in here. This is a little bit lighter. So what I do sometimes is just take some of that out. And maybe take some of that edge off here. I usually don't take the outside edge off next to the water because it really is a sharper edge. But if I want something to show up, I want this edge to show up, I just put a little dark underneath it, below it. This is very light in here. In the picture it's not. So what we do a lot of times is just quiet that down, just with a little, oh gosh, just a little soft, oh, not that. I don't need that much water. There we go, something like that. Just quiets that down a little bit. Okay, now what I want to do is make sure I've got some color on the edges here. Because when I pull the tape off, it's going to be white on white if I don't have that paper filled in a bit. Okay. I'm going to try to pull the tape off here. See what we have. I got pictures on top of pictures here. I can get some of this tape started. Good tape. Might be too good. I'm going to come back at that later. See if I have any luck over here. Yeah, that cleans that up. Now we get this piece. All right. About one more to go. Yeah. Now, what I normally do is let that dry and overnight, and then when I come back in the morning or when I get back to it, I can check it out. And the beauty of watercolor, once you hit it with water, you reactivate the paint. That's pretty much it. So I guess we've run out of a little bit of time here, so for this session I'm going to grab my brush and say brush is up and time's up, and we'll see you again next time, okay?